The O'Reilly Factor's on tonight.
Is it your intention to always tell the truth from that podium, and will you pledge never to knowingly say something that is not factual?
Plenty of action at the White House today with the press challenging the Trump administration. We'll take a look at that and the chaos over the weekend.
I feel Hitler in these streets. A mustache traded for a toupee. Nazis renamed the cabinet.
Crazy left people making their feelings known. But are they actually helping President Trump?
Did you watch the inaugural address?
Actually, yeah.
What did you think of the speech?
I actually didn't watch the speech. I didn't see the speech part, that part.
Also ahead, Waters getting analysis of the inauguration from the folks.
I see a lot of people who are enthused and hopeful for what's on the horizon.
Caution. You are about to enter the no spin zone. Factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Donald Trump on the job. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Busy news day. President Trump signed 3 executive orders. Number 1, USA will leave the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That trade agreement is now toast. Number 2, there is a federal hiring freeze in place with the exception of the military. And number 3, the U.S. government will no longer pay any agency for performing abortions overseas. In addition, there was a press briefing today at the White House. Britt Hume will analyze that coming up. It is quite clear to me that President Trump is going to be an activist. That means he's going to change a lot of things fast. Congress people think they're going to get a lot of gym time. They're mistaken. Mr. Trump's also going to challenge the American press, which he loathes. Over the weekend, there was a silly controversy over whose inauguration crowd was bigger, Trump's or Obama's, a macho thing. With all due respect, who cares? If you're interested in that kind of thing, television ratings really tell a tale. Donald Trump's inauguration clocked in with the 5th highest TV viewership. Ronald Reagan was first. But today, Press Secretary Sean Spicer said that if you add in all the people watching on the internet devices, the Trump inauguration reached more folks than any other. Most likely true, but again, not really important to the country. What is far more compelling is the press war between the president and national media outlets. Talking Points sees it clearly. Many in the media had a vested interest in seeing President Obama succeed. And those same exact people have a vested interest in seeing Donald Trump fail. He knows it, you know it, and I know it. The only reason to compare crowds at the inauguration, the only reason, was to embarrass Donald Trump. Everyone knows Washington, D.C. and its suburbs are Democrat strongholds. Come on. Now, there are 2 roads for the Trump administration to take here. You can rise above the national media and bring your message directly to the folks, or you can slug it out.
I'm saying there's an obsession by the media to delegitimize this president. And we are not going to sit around and let it happen. We are going to fight back tooth and nail every day and twice on Sunday.
So we can expect a lot of time devoted to this press battle. Now, back in the year 2000, presidential candidate George W. Bush faced the same kind of media bias.
You know something, Bill? I've learned a pretty good lesson. That's never to complain about the press coverage. I don't like some of the coverage, but I tell you, the worst moments for me in politics was when I saw people say ugly things about my dad. I was a loyal son. He's the guy that gave me unconditional love, and I was ready to launch after anybody would say something ugly.
And you did on a couple of occasions.
I did. I know. But you know, something's a lot different being the person who's going to become your president.
And George W. Bush did not engage the press. He mostly ignored the slings and arrows. Talking Points believes that hurt Mr. Bush a bit, as his image suffered in the relentless criticism he endured. The Iraq War should have been defined better by the Bush administration, especially after the weapons of mass destruction were not found. But George W. Bush made a decision not to take on the press, and they hammered him. So there's no way Donald Trump's going to allow that to happen. Whether the ongoing confrontation is good for the country, for you guys, remains to be seen. What Americans have to understand is that there is an organized effort to get Donald Trump out of office. This is a largely unreported story. The Women's March over the weekend, a perfect example. That wasn't a spontaneous event. It was organized by far-left groups, which received millions of dollars from the liberal activist George Soros. In fact, Soros has ties to 50 of the groups that attended the Women's March this weekend. 50. And according to the Media Research Center, Soros has pumped $90 million into those groups. Some of the top march organizers were members of the Obama administration, Hillary Clinton's campaign, Bernie Sanders' campaign. Again, this was not some spontaneous uprising. This is a well-thought-out political spectacle designed to denigrate the new president. And if you watch the exposition, you heard some really crazy stuff.
Blacks are still in shackles and graves just for being black. Slavery has been reinterpreted as the prison system in front of people who see melanin as animal skin. I am not as nasty as a swastika painted on a pride flag. And I didn't know devils could be resurrected, but I feel Hitler in these streets. A mustache traded for a toupee. Nazis renamed the cabinet.
Hey. Now that kind of extremism is simply nuts. Yet the Trump administration responded.
You have celebrities from the podium using profanity-laced insults. You have a very prominent singer who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars not going over to a women's shelter here in D.C. to write a check, but instead saying that she's thought of, quote, burning down the White House.
Talking about Madonna?
Well, this is destructive.
I think she said blow up the White House, not burn it down. It would take too long. Now, Ms. Conway's correct. It is destructive. Not good for the country. Talking points has no problem with people demonstrating against a politician or a political party. That's time-honored. But insane charges of fascism, racism, and the like demean our system. It's clear the far left will not give President Trump a chance and will do everything it can to get him out of office before his term is over. It's going to lead to trouble. And the crazy left has a powerful ally, the media. You won't hear them reporting about how George Soros is manipulating protests behind the scenes. You will not hear that. Finally, a presidential inauguration is supposed to be a time of celebration for the country, not nonstop acrimony. Donald Trump is a confrontational guy. He's not going to sit around and take a lot of garbage. But by responding to obvious provocations, the Trump administration veers away from the people's business. We've said it before. The Trump administration will rise or fall on its policy accomplishments. If the economy ignites and security gets tighter, Mr. Trump will be a successful president. If that does not happen, the dissent will become overwhelming. And that's a memo. Next on the rundown, Charles Krauthammer will reply. Then Austin Goolsbee will give us an opposing point of view. Later, the White House press briefing today. Fred Hume has some thoughts on that. And The Factor is coming right back. Continuing now with our lead story, Donald Trump on the job at the White House. Joining us from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. Did I miss anything about the first day, Charles?
No, but I think there's something about the march that is, I think, even more significant, what the media are doing. What they're doing now, and I don't think this is a concerted effort, this is not orchestrated, this is simply, I mean, the media being overwhelmingly liberal, they think the same way. But what they are doing is to try to call this the Tea Party of the left. They have been kicking themselves since 2009, 2010 for missing the Tea Party phenomenon, which became enormously important in the by-elections, the elections of 2010, in the loss of the House and the Senate by the Democrats over time. They ridiculed the Tea Party, they condescended to it, they ignored it. So what they've tried to do is to look for that on the left. And they started with Occupy Wall Street. Remember, the New York Times' own ombudsman said they were promoting the cause, pretending it was a real movement. It was nothing of the sort. It was spoiled, unemployed, overeducated college students who blew away with the first winds of winter, disappeared. This they see, the march of Saturday. Look at the headlines, Tea Party, left-wing Tea Party. Can they revive it?
Yeah.
The fact is, it is not. They are overestimating it. They're going to promote it, and they're going to fail.
What about the Soros factor? When you have this kind of a billionaire behind 50 of the groups that sponsored the march and donating, according to reports, $90 million to those groups, that seems to be a little frightening when there's one guy and his crew, pushing this as a democratic movement when it really is a contrived movement, is it not?
You can put all the money you want into all the organizations you want, but the 500,000 people or so who showed up in Washington were not coming because of the waving of money or because a bunch of groups had funding. Look, all groups have funding. The conservative groups, the liberal groups, far left groups, big deal. That was real people showing up. My question to those real people was, where the hell were you on election day?
Well, they probably
they
just lost. But don't you feel,
I don't know.
Don't you feel they showed up because they were told to show up? I mean, look, if you look at the totalitarian governments in the 20th century.
You're told to show up?
Yeah.
Who tells anybody to show up?
They live
in
on the
this
websites.
country?
These people live on the websites.
What's the threat? What's the threat? Why do they have to go?
Well, they have to go. They don't have to go through a negative. They have to go to be with their brothers and sisters and to show their solidarity and that they're good people and fight the fascist racists. I mean, it's a whip-up. And if you study history, all the totalitarian regimes were fueled by whip-ups, okay? And the people turned out to the street. Were they spontaneous? No. They were very well organized and targeted. And the target this time is Trump, to get him out of there before the 4 years are over.
Look, if you're talking about the fascists in the 20s and the 30s, they actually took over governments essentially by force. We're not talking about that. When you're talking about people showing up, being whipped up, you're saying free people read the internet. They decide they sympathize with this idea or group. They get on a train. They get in a car. They cross country. They go to a demonstration. How is that different from the March on Washington in 1963? Were they whipped up? Yes, by a civil rights movement.
Here's how it's different.
I don't think there's a movement here.
Here's how it's different. The civil rights movements in the 60s and all of the demonstrations that took place were against injustice. All right? You could see it. It was there. All right? Same thing with Vietnam. A lot of people felt war was not being waged properly. It was unjust. Working soldiers, working-class soldiers were being exploited, and on and on. There's no injustice here. This is a perception of fascism and racism and bigotry. All right? There's no proof. You can't provide it. This is a contrived demonstration, Charles. It's not based on reality as the 60s were. Go.
Well, I mean, you're talking about perceptions here. Are you aware of how many communist groups there were for the March on Washington? How many there were in the Vietnam anti-war movement?
A lot of them. Absolutely.
SDS, you know all of these. A lot of them were funded by unsavory sorts.
And the folks should know
who's to
this.
judge what's the real? Look, what they're protesting, to the extent that they actually have an ideology, and there were all kinds of groups with a lot of weird causes in there. It was more amusing to me than frightening. What they're protesting, if anything, is Donald Trump and the threat they perceive coming from him. Well, we have a democracy. You settle that at the ballot box. But they have every right to express themselves.
And I said that.
And you may judge. Well, you may judge it as
I think there's something more nefarious going on behind the scenes than you do. I really do.
Come on. Are you really So you're afraid of these?
I'm not afraid of anybody.
Women, are you?
Not afraid of anybody.
Yes, you are.
I think there's a lot of things behind the scenes that it's not going to be reported by anybody. That there's a lot of manipulation going on, a lot of propaganda going on. A lot of bad things going on that people should know about. That's my job to tell them.
All right, well,
and have a robust
I
debate with
understand,
you.
but I would recommend less paranoia, less conspiracy, and a little relaxation. It will be okay. It was just a demonstration. They are not going to take over the White House.
I'm going to take your
my
advice.
Personal guarantee.
And tomorrow's talking points will be delivered with me in a hammock. Relaxation.
I'll just I'll prescribe the Valium. You take it as
Never
directed.
take it. Never. No drugs for me. Clear-headed at all times. Charles Krauthammer. Directly ahead, Dr. Austin Goolsbee will weigh in on how the Trump administration is dealing with the Democrats on Capitol Hill. Then there was this today.
Is it your intention to always tell the truth from that podium?
Brit Hume will opine whether or not that question was out of line. Up ahead. Impact segment tonight, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said the Trump administration wants to work with Democrats in Congress. But is that possible? Joining us now from Chicago, Dr. Austin Goolsbee, former member of the Obama cabinet. So before we get to that, you heard Charles Krauthammer and I kick it around. I think it's a little bit more serious than a doctor does as far as mobilizing people to undermine the new administration. What say you?
You know, I thought Dr. Krauthammer was kind of correct. You sounded like you were getting a little unhinged or something. I didn't know where you were going with that.
Can you point to a phrase that signified my unhinged?
I'll just say this. There were some 1,000+ people demonstrating in Fairbanks, Alaska, where it was 18 below zero. That wasn't a conspiracy espoused by George Soros or others.
No, and they were told
historians say this was the largest demonstration.
All right.
Historians say it's the largest demonstration in American history.
That wasn't a Boston Tea Party, okay? That was these people in Fairbanks got a little message on their computer saying, meet here, and your fellow socialists will be out there, and you can have a good time.
It was the biggest demonstration in American history around the country. So, yes, you're going to find some people who have weird views, but overall, it's pretty significant challenge.
Directed.
I think that's why Donald Trump was so insecure about it.
This was directed. It was not spontaneous. And we can prove that.
Was the Tea Party demonstration of Tax Day 2009 directed?
It was suggested, not directed. There wasn't big money behind a Tea Party, as you'll remember.
Oh, well, okay.
All right? There wasn't big money behind it at all.
This was some 10 times bigger than those demonstrations on Tax Day 2009.
$90 million is a lot of money, all right, going to those groups who sponsored that demonstration. Nothing like that took place with the Tea Party. Now, do you believe the Trump administration is capable or even wants to work with Democrats in Congress?
I don't know that they are capable or want to. And you know, in a way, it kind of comes back to these demonstrations. If you win an election narrowly, there is one approach, which is the JFK approach, which is he wins a narrow election, and he wins the Electoral College actually by more than Donald Trump won. But he makes his inaugural address one which says, hey, look, I know a lot of you voted for the other guy, but I'm going to be your president too and give me a chance. And he puts Republicans in prominent positions in his cabinet, and he starts by doing policy that the wide consensus of the country can agree on. If Donald Trump had done that, if Donald Trump had in his inaugural address even said, I know a lot of you voted against me, I know I didn't get the majority of the vote, but I'm going to prove you wrong, give me a chance, I think these demonstrations would have been half the size that they were.
No, I don't. Whatever he says, he's a racist and a fascist. And you heard Ashley Judd, that great political scientist. Okay. You might be right on Trump and his administration saying, look, you know what? We got our majority in the Senate. We got our majority in the House. And we have our really fervent supporters who voted for us. We don't need Chuck Schumer and his merry men.
That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, but we got to say we need them just to be, you know, whatever. That's possible. But if the economy starts to surge, and you're an economist, and that's what you helped President Obama with, if the tax cuts and the regulations going down stimulate the economy quickly, Democrats are going to be in a tight spot.
Yes, I guess I would say for sure, if they don't stimulate the economy, if we keep putting up jobs numbers like the ones we put up for the last 7 years, or we do worse than that, then I think that Donald Trump will be in a tough spot.
No doubt.
So I think you're right.
Deliver. He's got to deliver the economy.
He's got to deliver. I agree with you.
He's got to deliver security, border security and ISIS security. There's no doubt. And if he doesn't, then it'll be there'll be more demonstrations orchestrated by George Soros, who's not going to run out of money anytime soon.
And there's a reason why he's got the lowest approval rating of any incoming president, I think, and it's because he's going with I won, no matter how close it was, I'm charging ahead. I don't need you guys. And I think he's going to overstep.
That reminds me of a man named Barack Obama who said pretty much the same thing.
No, but Barack Obama won big, as did Ronald Reagan. They did their policies.
I won my way or the highway.
They did kind of do that.
I think you should try to persuade.
I'm not disputing you.
I try to persuade you, Doctor, all the time. And I mean, it's futile, but I try to persuade you. I think persuasion is good. All right, Doc, we appreciate it. Plenty more as the factor moves along this evening. Brady Human, some thoughts? On a first press conference today, there was a heated exchange. We'll show you that. Waters, talking to the folks about the inauguration.
What would you have liked to see President Trump say?
What does he actually want to do? In a clear way?
I think he made that pretty clear.
Hope you stay tuned for those reports. Cube's own segment tonight, as mentioned in the Talking Points memo, the relationship between President Trump and the press is strained, to say the least. But in the White House briefing today, it was mostly civil. Only one heated moment.
Do you stand by your statement that was the most watched inaugural address?
Sure, it was the most watched inaugural.
More than Ronald Reagan's in 1981.
I'm pretty sure that Reagan didn't have YouTube, Facebook, or the internet. Yeah, I think 41 million people watched his. 41 million watched his, okay? So let's just take the Nielsen ratings, which are 31 million, and add it to CNN, 16.9 million. That's a little higher.
All right, that was a reference to streaming on CNN or something. But Spicer, by bringing in the internet, seems to have gotten the better of that exchange. Joining us now from Boca Grande, Florida, Britt Hume. So I thought he won that round. What say you?
Well, I'd say he got himself to some extent out from under what appeared to many, I think unfairly, to be a bald claim that the crowd on hand in Washington watching in person was the biggest ever. And, you can't know these things for sure because you just can't, but it certainly didn't appear that was true. And so when he said on Saturday in that statement in which he denounced the press for refusing to acknowledge that it was the biggest crowd ever, his statement was ambiguous in the sense that he went on to talk about, the audience worldwide. And, of course, once you mention that, you can drag in, as he did today in that answer, internet streaming and YouTube and who knows what else, at which point you're into an area which is just simply
you can't
not
calibrate it.
And he might...
Right.
Right. It's unverifiable. But it was denounced, what he said the other day was denounced by many people in the media as a lie. A word that is flung around with abandon these days, and I think that's regrettable and unprofessional.
Do you consider it a lie?
No, I consider it to be an unverifiable claim, a dubious claim perhaps, but to call it a lie implies a level of, first of all, you have to know for certain that the person knew it was false and had the intent to mislead. And I think that's unprovable, and therefore a word we should resist using as journalists who are trying, or should be trying, to be neutral in our observations.
Now, the story was silly, as I said in the Talking Points memo. Who cares, really? It doesn't have anything to do with anybody's life or improving the country. But I believe that it was put up there to show that Barack Obama was more popular than Donald Trump. I think that's why they did it.
Well, perhaps, but, Trump is in the habit of making extravagant claims.
Right.
Most of them are matters of opinion. And while you may doubt them or whatever, you just got to kind of let them go.
So everybody knows that he delves into hyperbole. So who cares? I mean, why is it a front page story? Let's go to the important stuff.
Well, I completely agree, Bill. And look at Saturday as an example. He goes to the CIA. which is kind of a surprise. You know, you wouldn't have thought after the disagreements with certain intelligence officials and seemingly with the intelligence community as a whole that would be his first stop and his first day as president, but it was. He got a hugely friendly reception out there, ovations and cheering of his remarks. And he talked about his support for the intelligence agents, and that got a big response. And then he veered off into the discussion himself of the estimates of the crowd size, and then next thing you know, he was talking about the number of times he'd been on Time magazine's cover. I can't for the life of me figure out why he felt the need to do that. I mean, there's nothing really harmful about it, but it seems to me that the next thing you know, you're delving into these issues, you make them newsworthy. And then he sends his press secretary out later to make this denunciation of the media and take no questions. Now, you know, I don't think Sean Spicer was lying, but it's an unverifiable claim. Why make it? I mean, the crowd size of an inauguration is something the world will little note nor long remember until perhaps the next inauguration. And there's no reason for him to spend any of his political capital or his press secretary's credibility on the issue. You just move on. And, you know, now he's doing all these things, and they ought to be what the focus is on and what he would want the focus to be on, it seems to me.
Yeah, he doesn't like to be, he wants to win. Donald Trump wants to win, whether it's the inauguration crowd or the television ratings. He wants to win. That's what motivates him. Great to hear, everybody. We come right back. Some rapid-fire segments. Is the press essentially dishonest in America? Waters talking to folks about the inauguration. And a woman thrown off a plane for screaming at a fellow passenger about politics. Right back. Next, stay with us in Bill O'Reilly Personal Story segment tonight. Is the American press essentially honest? Compelling question. Here to answer it, Marianne Marsh in Boston, Katie Pavlich in Washington. What I noticed, Katie, was on the coverage of the Women's March, there wasn't a lot of criticism by the press, and some really ugly things were said. Horrible things, inappropriate things. Yet I didn't see any criticism of that. And I just said, you know what? If that had been said by conservative individuals, it would have been page one in every newspaper across the country. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I mean, you have Madonna saying that she's thought a whole lot about blowing up the White House, and now the Secret Service is investigating her. I haven't seen a whole lot of coverage about that in the mainstream media, and if that was said about another president with a different political party next to their name, it would be front page news, and it should be, quite frankly.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think that's a serious investigation. I don't think Miss Madonna is going to be put in cuffs, and I don't even know if Miss Madonna knows.
They're knocking on her door and asking some questions for sure. They take that pretty seriously.
They want to know where she bought the hat. That's what they want to know. They don't know like that.
She knitted the hat, Bill. She knitted it with all of her knitting friends.
I believe you're both honest individuals, and Marianne, you've got to understand that when stuff like that is said, and there isn't any much press coverage of it at all, it's all, oh, look how many women showed up, oh, all of this, and they want their rights, and they want to be heard, but there's no focus on the hate. That's not honest reporting, Marianne.
Well, I think a lot of outlets, media outlets, TV outlets in particular, ran clips like the ones we just watched. So they did get covered.
I didn't see them.
Did it get covered to the extent that you would have liked to have seen? Probably not. I think the crowd size was so overwhelming that became the story, especially since it was the day after the Trump inauguration. And they were peaceful. There was not one arrest. They were in all 50 states. There were 600 of them and around the world. And I think that just dominated the coverage.
But that's not what the press is in business to do. The press is in business to report what happens. Katie.
Look, Bill,
here's a good example. Look, on Friday, hundreds of thousands of pro-life Americans will come to Washington, D.C. from all over the place and march in the March for Life. That happens every year, and we don't hear about it. And that's another form of the media being dishonest. They cover the things they like to. They have a narrative that they like to promote. They look for conclusions before they look for the facts, which is exactly what we saw over the weekend with this tweet about the MLK bus being removed from the White House when it wasn't removed from the White House. And so we've seen this for decades, for years, quite frankly. And this is why the White House is actually changing the way that coverage is seen by opening up the briefings to different reporters, by promoting different kinds of media, and by promoting conservative media, which at least is honest about where they're coming
Trump
from
gets
in terms of their agenda.
From them, but look, Marianne, what if there was a giant pro-Trump rally, and in that rally, a very famous person got up and said, I want to blow up the White House, and Barack Obama was still president. And because of all the executive orders that President Obama signed, I believe that he is Hitler-tarian. If that had happened on a Tea Party rally, you know, Marianne, what would have taken place.
You're right, but I think we saw a lot of that during this last election. I think the real point here, Bill, is can the media do better? Yes, of course. I think standards have dropped, unfortunately, and you have so many media outlets out there now who don't practice any standards or very little or come from a very decided viewpoint. That's hurt everybody, and that's why we have debates now about fake news. We have debates about facts, which is even more troubling. But I think when you look at some of the things that have come up in the last few days, that the MLK bust was an error of omission.
It
and
was,
the reporter
but it
apologized.
was an
That's
error
understandable.
made by a man.
It was conclusion before facts.
No, it was an error. Hold on, guys. It was an error of omission. The reporter apologized, and Sean Spicer accepted it.
You have to look deeper. It was made by a man and a publication that despises Donald Trump.
Bill, you can't have that standard and then not hold Donald Trump and Sean Spicer to the standard of errors of commission they committed on Saturday at the CIA.
You can't justify bad behavior by pointing to other bad behavior.
You can't have it both ways.
Yes, I can.
You can't have it both ways.
We're talking about one issue, and the issue is the media essentially dishonest? And the answer,
and they need to hold everyone accountable.
Yes, it is. Ladies, thank you. Waters on deck. He talked to the folks about what they took away from the inauguration weekend. Waters is next. Back in the book segment tonight, Waters' World, with President Trump appealing directly to the American people to enhance his power. Waters' World takes on a far more significant meaning because Waters is a man of the people. He went out today to sample opinion on the inauguration.
What did you think about the inaugural address?
I don't even know what that is. Can we stop doing this thing here?
What did you think about the inaugural address?
I feel like I was watching a reality show, really. Like it didn't look like. It don't. I don't know. It looked like a joke to me.
What was so funny? What did you think about the inaugural address?
Say what you want about Trump. He was spot on. He's pissing a lot of people off and he's making a lot of people happy.
Was there any line specifically in the address that caught your attention?
America First is definitely fine, but we shouldn't be isolating ourselves from our global citizen mates.
What would you have liked President Trump to say?
What he's going to do about the School of Arts. What's he going to do to financially help us.
That's unbelievable. I think it's full of crap. I don't believe in nothing he's saying at all, and it's just like, you need to upstep the game.
What? He's your president now.
You're not my president. I'm still holding on to Obama. I have not let him go yet. I'll never let go.
I'm going to name a series of people. You just tell me if they were president of the United States or not.
Let's do it.
Warren Harding.
Not.
James Polk.
Not.
Yikes. Edgar Johnson.
President.
When was Edgar Johnson president?
If I'm not mistaken, probably like 1967, something like that.
Wilson B. Jefferson.
Yes.
Calvin Coolidge.
I don't think so. Am I getting them wrong?
Yes. Grover Cleveland.
No.
James Polk.
Nope.
Oh, man. Christopher T. Johnson.
Yes.
I know there's a problem. I'll say there is.
Ted Tillerson.
President.
Republican or Democrat?
Republican.
It's no use. I'll have to give it up.
Calvin Coolidge, president or not?
I wouldn't know.
Oh, my God.
Warren Harding.
No.
James Monroe.
No, that's before my time.
William Tilden.
No.
Calvin Coolidge, president or not?
Yes.
He's a genius, see?
Henry Adams.
Ooh, you're mixing names together. Oh, no.
Was James Garfield the president of the United States?
Yes? No.
Now tell me about James Garfield.
He was the president of the United States.
Yes.
Yay!
Do you know who I am?
No.
Do you know who I am?
I don't remember your name.
Waters, and this is my world.
All right.
That boy is good. Mm-hmm. Good and terrible.
Here's Waters. The last guy hit his head before he took it.
I think they all hit their
It was
heads.
a little. So the presidential quiz, even though you gave the name.
No, they still didn't get it
Didn't
right.
get it.
No. The best part wasn't even on camera. I go to a guy, can I ask you a few questions? He goes, no, I'm high on cocaine.
Oh, they at least they were upfront about it.
So
right?
honest about it.
Yeah. So do you, when you hear this, James Monroe was the president, no. Do you ever follow up off camera and go, why didn't you know that?
No, I don't want to embarrass these people.
Okay, so you just...
I'm trying to establish nice rapport.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're not judgmental.
I made them feel nice, like they actually got it right.
You're not judgmental.
Right.
About them knowing nothing.
Just now I am.
Okay, well, that's America. Man of the people, Jesse Waters, every one factor. Tip of the day, a woman thrown off an airliner for yelling about politics.
You pretend you have the moral high ground, but you put that man's finger on the nape of your butt. That man doesn't believe.
Back to tip of the day, talking politics on an airline and get you thrown off in a moment. First, the mail, Robert Brown, Miami, Florida. Why is so much time spent on how many people were present at the inauguration ceremony? Who cares? What difference does it make in anyone's life? Two entities have strong interests, Robert. The press, because they want to convince Americans that Barack Obama had stronger support than Donald Trump, and Mr. Trump himself, who, as I said, wants to win all the time. Mike Papakosmas, Toronto, Canada. Bob Woodward dismissed the violent protests as minor, but they caused significant damage, and once again, law was not enforced. Masks are prohibited in Washington, D.C. Right you are, Mike. My opinion, authorities have been generally too lenient on violent people who target police and property. Wear a mask, you should be arrested. Now, we've given this story of the demonstrators, the violent ones, arrested in D.C., to Martha McCallum. It's investigating what's going to happen to them. Should be here on Wednesday. Christine Garrity, Delray Beach, Florida. At least President Obama did not pardon Bo Bergdahl. I was surprised that he will be facing trial. His lawyers have asked for dismissal, citing President Trump's previous condemnation of Bergdahl, Christine. But it looks like there will be a trial, and that's a good thing. Janman Gossin, Pretoria, South Africa. During Christmas, I finished reading Killing the Rising Sun. Totally captivating. You have a true gift, Bill. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. At Lynch, Brooklyn, New York. I'm a Navy vet who took part in the occupation post-World War II. I became overwhelmed with emotion as I read about your father in Killing the Rising Sun. Great work. My dad was in the occupation and witnessed Japanese troops returning from places like Manchuria. I'm glad you liked the book, Ed. Thanks for reading it. Kyle Bemlander, Fredericksburg, Virginia. Mr. O, very excited about your upcoming book, Old School. I'm a high school teacher and have a question. Would you still become a teacher knowing how much has changed? Yes, I would, Kyle. Noble profession, and the kids need you and skilled instructors. If they are old school, so much the better. Book is out March 28th. You guys will like it. Bill Elliott, Houston, Texas. Bill, when will Killing Patton and Rising Sun be made into movies? Patton's in pre-production for Nat Geo Milt. Rising Sun being negotiated, even as we speak. Thanks for asking. And I'd like to remind everybody we have a very interesting podcast. Robert Samuel interviewing presidential historian John Meacham. Check it all out on iTunes and BillO'Reilly.com. iTunes. Finally tonight, fact, a tip of the day on Saturday, an Alaska airline flight scheduled to go from Baltimore to Seattle, Washington. But shortly after boarding, a woman started causing trouble.
That man doesn't believe in climate change. Do you believe in gravity? Did you know gravity is just a theory?
I paid for this seat and I'm sitting here. He is in my space.
Now, that woman did a lot more than that. We couldn't show it to you. but she was kicked off the plane, but not charged. She should have been, because this kind of stuff can reach critical mass very quickly. You can't have people verbally assaulting other people in public places for politics. Come on. Fact and tip of the day, authorities take note. And that is it for us tonight. Please check out the Fox News Factor website. No. Please check out the Fox News website, different from BillO'Reilly.com. Also, we'd like you to spout out about the fact of anywhere in the world. O'Reilly at FoxNews.com, O'Reilly at FoxNews.com. Name and down if you wish to opine. Word of the day. Do not be perjurious when writing to the factor. All right? Now, we have Gutfeld McGurk on, but I understand them have both been arrested, so we're trying to get bail money for them, and hopefully they'll be here tomorrow night. Again, thanks for watching us. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Please always remember that the spin stops here. We are definitely looking out for you.